When Grease debuted in cinemas in 1978, it was not your typical musical. A cultural storm occurred. The film, which starred Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta, was a box office success, grossing around $400 million worldwide. Fans adored the dazzling dance routines, catchy music, and high school drama encapsulated in nostalgia for the 1950s. Grease had its share of issues, though, despite its fame and success. It was deemed too audacious for its period by some observers, with moments that provoked controversy and stretched limits. Come along with us as we rewatch the movie and discover why so many people argue over whether Grease was a work of pure amusement or a work that was far ahead of its time. A cultural phenomenon's emergence. When Grease debuted in 1978, it was not your typical musical. In popular culture, it was a watershed moment. It was Randall Kleiser's debut feature picture, and it was based on the 1972 stage musical that Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey wrote. The narrative focused on the charming Australian transfer student Sandy Olsen, Olivia Newton-John, and the greaser Danny Zuko, John Travolta. Their summer romance turned into a blend of adolescent drama, comedy, and memorable music when school started. In America, the movie's premiere swiftly became a festivity. People flocked to the theaters, and word quickly got out. It proved that it had caught more than simply the essence of the 1950s, as it became one of the year's most talked about films. It had produced its own ageless vitality. The thrill was heightened by the soundtrack. There were songs like You're the One That I Want and Hopelessly Devoted to You playing on radios, in homes, and during school assemblies. Even Olivia Newton-John's ballad received an Academy Award nomination, demonstrating that the movie was not just well-liked but also regarded by the business. Soon after, there were several Golden Globe nominations for awards, including Best Motion Picture for either comedy or musical. Years later, in 2020, the Library of Congress recognized Grease as having cultural, historical, or artistic significance. Its historical status was cemented at that point. The road wasn't easy, though, despite this triumph. Prequels, reboots, and sequels would subsequently attempt to replicate the same enchantment. Starring Maxwell Caulfield and Michelle Pfeiffer, Grease 2 debuted in the early 1980s but fell short of its predecessors. A TV show called Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies attempted to re-enter the Rydell High universe more recently, and a second prequel movie is currently in development. The cast was the driving force behind the film's success, bringing those vibrant characters to life, but all of these attempts just serve to highlight how deeply ingrained the love for Grease is. A generation was defined by its cast. One cannot discuss Grease without praising the ensemble. John Travolta played Danny Zuko, the charismatic and swaggering greaser who wore a sleek leather jacket. Olivia Newton-John as Sandy, the timid but resilient newcomer whose astonishing metamorphosis at the end of the movie left viewers in awe. Then the Pink Women and T-Birds arrived. Two groups characterized the enthusiasm of the high school. As Danny's devoted right-hand man, Kaniki, Jeff Conaway was joined by Barry Pearl, Michael Tucci, and Kelly Ward, who each contributed personality and comedic relief as Duty, Sonny, and Putzie. On the other hand, the Pink Ladies dominated every scene they appeared in. By combining toughness and tenderness, Stockard Channing's portrayal of Betty Rizzo offered the group an advantage. Audiences were captivated by D.D. Kahn's charming and erratic Frenchie persona. With their individual eccentricities, Jamie Donnelly's Jan and Dinah Manoff's Marty created a trio that perfectly balanced humor, style, and mischief. Every figure had a sense of realism, as if viewers could identify a relative at their own school. However, the cast was not the only element that influenced the film. Creative choices taken by director Randall Kleiser caused the tale to deviate from its stage origins. The film veered into a more suburban, dreamy high school atmosphere, reflecting Kleiser's own adolescent years in Philadelphia, rather than the gritty Chicago backdrop of the stage musical. In addition to maintaining the rebellious spirit, this gave Grease a softer, even nostalgic air. During the film's production, Warren Casey, one of the stage musical's original authors, had little influence. After his theme song selection was turned down, the Bee Gees' Barry Gibb was invited to fill in at the last minute. The new theme turned out to be one of the movie's hallmark songs, so that choice was wise. These adjustments demonstrated how the movie took chances. Although not everyone shared their opinions, the outcomes were indisputable. However, when cinemas were packed and the movie became a box office powerhouse, that was the true test of its success. An inexhaustible box office hit. When Grease came out, people flocked to the theaters. At the height of summer, it was launched, and within weeks, theaters were crowded with admirers who came back time and time again to relive the dance numbers and melodies. By the time it ended, it was the largest movie of the year and set decades-long records for musicals. The response was as overwhelming in the UK. It became a worldwide sensation because of its humor, vitality, and catchy soundtrack, which appealed to people from all walks of life. Grease stood apart due to the fact that it was a continuous success. It repeatedly made its way back to theaters. It was reprinted in the late 1970s, drawing viewers back for more. When the 20th anniversary was re-released in the late 1990s, people flocked to the theater once more. In 2018, to commemorate its 40th anniversary, the movie returned on the big screen, reminding everyone of its enchantment. In remembrance of Olivia Newton-John, Grease was re-released in theaters in 2022. Not all viewers merely watched the film. They honored Sandy and Danny's legacy, dressed up, and sang along. Although the numbers garnered media attention, the fans' devotion was what counted most. Grease was able to attract audiences as if it were brand new even decades later. In Hollywood, that is not common. Many movies lose their plot after their box office run, but Grease didn't let that happen. Because of its characters, music, and the feelings it evoked in viewers, it endured. Even so, there was always more to the discourse than the happiness and memories it brought. While some thought the movie was entertaining and humorous, others thought it was too bold for its day. Initial acclaim and mixed reviews. When Grease debuted in 1978, it was regarded by many as one of the year's greatest movies. But there were disagreements among the detractors. As of right now, the film has an overall positive score on review websites. However, reactions were not uniform at the time. While some critics praised it, others were critical. Among those who expressed optimism was Vincent Canby of the New York Times. He termed it a bigger, funnier, wittier, and more inventive film than a Hollywood production with a life of its own, and he said it was a lot of fun. He even said that Grease was a multi-million-dollar evocation of those kinds of movies, drawing comparisons to earlier teen musicals like Beach Party, 1963, and Don't Knock the Rock, 1956. Another well-known critic, Gene Siskel, rated it 3 stars. He suggested the movie to fans despite acknowledging that it only felt thrilling when John Travolta was in it. 4 of its musical pieces are true showstoppers that deserve ovation, he said. Additionally, the magazine Variety praised the dance as lively and the music, both fresh and recycled, as great. Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, in their opinion, performed incredibly well together, but not everyone was in agreement. The Los Angeles Times' Charles Champlin described the film as aggressive, disorganized, uninteresting, and ugly. The Washington Post's Gary Arnold was much more straightforward. He wrote, "I have never seen an uglier large-scale musical," and compared it to the new. Tastelessness. The humor was broad, according to Newsweek's David Anson, who described it as merely mediocre. The slow pacing and lackluster drama. However, he did acknowledge one thing. The good news is that John Travolta is not flat. You are unable to view anyone else while he is on screen. These initial responses demonstrate how polarized people's opinions were toward the film. Some viewed it as sloppy and superficial, while others found it to be revolutionary fun. Time would demonstrate, however, that the story was sustained by audiences rather than critics. Furthermore, Grease was often reviewed and reassessed throughout the years, with perspectives evolving over time. Years later, the movie was re-examined by reviewers. Roger Ebert re-examined it in 1998. He rated the musical as mediocre, charming, cheerful, and plastic, giving it 3 stars out of 4. The highlight, in his opinion, was Travolta's Elvis-inspired performance. However, he also thought the film handled the content like cringeworthy nonsense. In contrast, Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian gave it 5 stars in 2018 and stated that it was still a sugar rush movie. The reputation of the movie was influenced by fans in addition to critics. In their list of the 100 greatest musicals, Channel 4 named Grease the greatest musical ever in 2004. Additionally, Entertainment Weekly listed it as the 21st best high school film. These rankings demonstrated that, despite the varying opinions of critics, viewers saw Grease as one of the greatest. However, as the years passed, new arguments started to emerge. The movie was no longer viewed as merely entertaining. People began to wonder about its themes, meaning, and whether it had held up well over time. At that point, Grease evolved beyond a musical. It turned into a cultural conversation point. Additionally, these discussions weren't always positive. Grease has recently been re-evaluated by numerous critics and spectators from a contemporary perspective. According to some, the film's themes can be viewed as outdated by today's standards. According to Business Insider's Bryn Gelbart, the movie had a bad message and had not held up over time. According to Entertainment Weekly's Kristen Baldwin, the conclusion was very unfeminist. In addition to being extremely problematic, the movie was somewhat ahead of its time, according to Katie Hall of the Sydney Morning Herald. These differing opinions demonstrate how, even after several decades, the movie still sparks debates. However, News.com.o's Joe Hildebrand defended the film, claiming it wasn't as bad as other critics had said. According to him, the reason its characters say and do terrible, offensive things is because, well, they're just like regular people. The discussions peaked in 2020. When viewers complained about the film when it was broadcast on the BBC, reinstating previous criticism. Olivia Newton-John, however, addressed the topic personally. She referred to the remarks as absurd and reminded everyone that the movie wasn't intended to be taken too seriously. Her remarks brought the issue back to the fans' attention. It was a light-hearted musical, after all, and never professed to be flawless. The ongoing discussions, however, demonstrate that Grease has evolved beyond a sentimental work of entertainment. Across generations, it has become a film that provokes conversation on values, gender, and culture. Despite the controversy that dominated the news, the film's backstage secrets continued to captivate viewers for years to come. Greek fun facts: while viewers and critics disagreed on the film's significance, some interesting facts about its production continued to astound viewers. First of all, a large number of the songs that rose to fame in the film weren't even included in the stage production. Grease by Frankie Valli, Hopelessly Devoted to You, You're the One That I Want, and Summer Nights, Only Summer Nights were all from the Broadway version and were among the 4 songs that became enormous Billboard singles. The other 3 were written specifically for the movie. Their popularity led to their inclusion in later stage versions of Grease. However, several of the original play songs were not included in the film. Those Magic Changes, Freddie My Love, and It's Raining on Prom Night were relegated to background music rather than major acts. Years later, many of those songs were revived and put back into the spotlight by Fox's Grease Live in 2016. Other adjustments also occurred. The story's setting was shifted from Chicago to California. And the stage play Sandy Dombrowski was changed into the movie Sandy Olsen, an Australian. The T-Birds even replaced the Burger Palace Boys as the group's name. These specifics highlight the film's significant departure from its stage origins. Here's another interesting detail about the cast. Michael Biehn, who went on to become well known for his parts in James Cameron's science fiction movies, such as Aliens and The Terminator, made his cinematic debut in Grease. He played a Rydell student who was hit in the stomach during the basketball scene in an uncredited cameo. Sci-fi lovers are constantly surprised by this small detail. Odd coincidences and unexpected decisions. The weirdest connections can occasionally be found between movies and real life. When Rizzo and the Pink Ladies were filming the sleepover scene in which they sang Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee, one of the most terrifying coincidences occurred. As he looked at the photograph of Elvis Presley on the wall, Stockard Channing humorously sang a line about him. Elvis passed away on August 16, 1977, the day the scene was taped, as fate would have it. The fact that Elvis had actually been offered the position of the teen angel in the film but declined, leaving it to Frankie Avalon, is even darker. The song Greased Lightning, which was performed by Jeff Conaway's character Kaniki in the stage play, provided another behind-the-scenes twist. His big moment was scheduled to come, but John Travolta persuaded the producers to let Danny Zuko take over the song in the movie instead. Conaway was understandably upset about losing the attention that had been on his character. The last moments feature Sandy's well-known metamorphosis. It wasn't a costume at all when Olivia Newton-John wore tight black pants in You're the One That I Want. These were her personal old pants from the 1950s. She had to be practically sewn into them by the team after the zipper broke. Only Olivia's personal outfit made that last appearance one of the most recognizable movie scenes ever. We were also surprised by some of the casting selections. Before Travolta was cast as Danny Zuko, Henry Winkler, who is better known as the Fonz from Happy Days, was offered the part. It was rejected by Winkler, afraid that he would have to spend the rest of his career playing greasers. Now that I think about it, it's difficult to see anyone else playing Danny, yet that one choice altered the course of cinema. The moment where Sandy and Danny first meet at Frosty Palace comes next. It's no coincidence that the poster in the background is fuzzy, if you've ever noticed it. Although it was a Coca-Cola advertisement, the Coke poster had to be blurred out since Paramount had a contract with Pepsi. The blur was so noticeable that it nearly appeared to be an error, which was the issue. Fans still chuckle and point out the edit as one of the most obvious in the movie. These specifics demonstrate how Grease was shaped by even seemingly insignificant choices and events. The cast and the popularity of the film, however, had more mysteries that were just waiting to be revealed. Box office magic in grown-up teenagers. How old some of the high school students actually were is one of the funniest things about Grease. Casting adults as teenagers has always been a favorite of Hollywood, but this film went beyond that. When he played Danny, John Travolta was 23 years old. The actor who played Rizzo, Stockard Channing, was 33 and Olivia Newton-John was 29. The actress behind Cha-Cha Di Gregorio, Annette Charles, was 30 years old. The only real teenager who appeared in the movie was Lorenzo Lamas, who played Sandy's jock boyfriend Tom, and he didn't even have any dialogue. Even though this made the high school scenario seem larger than life, viewers still adored it. When the energy on television was so powerful, age didn't matter. Last but not least, the fact that Grease became so profitable is among its most startling facts. At just a few $1 million, the movie's budget was minuscule by Hollywood standards. However, it became one of the most successful musicals ever filmed thanks to the money it made. The film would have made nearly $700 million in total revenue when valued at today's prices. That's more than a few of the most popular superhero movies in recent years. A small-budget musical with straightforward settings and memorable tunes is unlikely to compete with mega franchises. However, Grease showed that it was feasible. Unexpected decisions, odd coincidences, and enormous success combined to make the movie more than just a tale of high school romance. It developed into a cultural force. And it becomes clearer why Grease is still regarded as one of the best musical movies ever created when each information is disclosed. The argument over a classic. Grease has been a movie that people are familiar with for over 40 years. It has been the song of choice during school breaks, the sing-along at weddings, and the source of party costume ideas. But this same movie has been the subject of intense discussions in recent years. It was broadcast by the BBC during Christmas 2020, and social media was ablaze with responses. Scenes and lyrics that felt out of place in the modern world were identified by viewers. The first number, Summer Nights, was one of the most talked about parts. In response to a question concerning Sandy from his buddies, Danny writes, "Did she put up a fight?" The #MeToo movement brought fresh scrutiny to that line. Another scene that has been seen as troublesome in the present is the drive-in scene in which Danny approaches Sandy. Smaller details were also picked up by some spectators, such as a boy peering down a girl's skirt as she sat on the bleachers. Others brought up the school dance scene, where it was illegal for same-sex couples to compete. In addition, there isn't any racial variety on film. And the movie abruptly appeared drastically different to viewers in the present day. Even the conclusion was ambiguous. Sandy, the kind nice girl, abruptly alters her demeanor and fashion sense in an attempt to get Danny back. This seemed to convey to some that women should alter who they are in order to please males. "I'm not offended by Grease, and I don't want it cancelled or banned," one spectator wrote on social media. "But now that I'm watching it, I see awkward parts that make me wince." These voices demonstrate the various ways that different generations might interpret the same movie. The topic of whether the movie should even be prohibited came up as these arguments became more heated. That notion, however, was not universally accepted. Cancel culture or nostalgia for the past. Media personalities joined in on the controversy surrounding racism and homophobia in Greece as it made headlines. In a mocking tweet on Good Morning Britain, Piers Morgan asked whether Greece should be barred for being homophobic and racist at the same time. Answer: no, the woke bloodthirsty fools who want it outlawed should be banned. Many people's feelings were mirrored in his remarks. Not even the people who observed the film's shortcomings thought it should be taken down. We are aware that the extremely old television programs and films are dubious, but that was a different era, one social media user clarified. Thank goodness, we've moved forward, but to outlaw everything. Yes, I can cringe while watching, but it seems excessive to outright forbid it. Grease is timeless. Avoid comparisons and view it as such. According to another, Grease is rapey, slut-shaming, and likely homophobic and weird, but it was produced during a period when these things weren't yet acceptable but were nonetheless accepted. I continue to watch it because, despite its lackluster aging, it is still a timeless masterpiece. This division is evident in these comments. The movie hasn't held up well over time, according to some. However, they contend that it belongs in history and ought to be viewed within that framework. A different viewer expressed a more forceful opinion, writing to people who believe that Grease is racist, homophobic, etc. Indeed, it is. However, you should avoid watching any film made before 2010 if you are unable to comprehend what life was like in the 1970s. They continued by explaining how movies today include more diverse and powerful female characters as a result of societal changes. However, life was just different in the 1970s. Grease is problematic beyond belief, but no one is asking for it to be banned, said another person in response to Piers Morgan. Give up trivializing the struggles of liberals. As a result, despite the heated debates, one fact persisted. People continued to watch the movie. At times, they rolled their eyes, laughed, and sang along, but they were unable to let it go. It also meant seeing details that were previously disregarded or dismissed when viewed through contemporary eyes. The reasons behind the prolonged debate surrounding Grease were further illuminated by those minor incidents. Problematic scenes as seen by contemporary eyes. Going back to Grease now is often like viewing two movies at once. It was a romantic, humorous, and musical film for kids who grew up with it. However, the uncomfortable elements are now more noticeable to grown-ups. In Grease Lightning, there is a phrase in Summer Nights that asks if Sandy resisted Danny's advances. Girls will cream over his car, Kaneki boasts, calling it a real pussy wagon. These sentences now land differently than when they were dismissed as humor. Unsettling habits are also revealed in the backdrop. As his companions chuckle, one of the T-Birds lies beneath the bleachers to investigate girls' skirts. In a different scene, Marty informs Rizzo that a man had tampered with her drink. This is humorously depicted in the script, but it is concerning by today's standards. The story's portrayal of women is also criticized. While Rizzo is criticized for overly reactive and is the subject of pregnancy rumors, Sandy is the blonde, naive ideal girl who needs to maintain her innocence. She's even called sloppy seconds by Danny. Although it is unpleasant to witness these double standards now, they are a reflection of the strain women endured in that time period. The idea that women should completely alter their identities and personalities in order to be with the man they love is what makes Grease difficult, according to one spectator. There are worse things I could do. Rizzo's stirring ballad in which she acknowledges her shortcomings while asserting her decisions was also included in the film. Later on, Stockard Channing clarified that her role was someone who enjoyed, which was uncommon for women in the 1970s. At the time, Rizzo was realistic, bold, and complex for young ladies. Years later, even Olivia Newton-John responded to criticism. I am aware that some people criticized me for wanting to change to be like him, she added. It's a movie and it's a fun story and I've never taken that too seriously. Her words show that not everyone sees Sandy's transformation as negative. Stockard Channing even called Sandy's final look a moment of empowerment for women. These different perspectives prove why debates around Grease are not simple. Just when you think the film is outdated, it surprises you with moments that still feel modern. And it is exactly this clash of ideas that has kept people talking for so long. Why Grease still lasts. For all the criticism and uncomfortable moments, Grease has managed to last for more than 4 decades. It is filled with contradictions. One moment it feels old-fashioned, the next it feels ahead of its time. Some scenes make audiences cringe, others make them laugh or cheer. Viewers find themselves caught between two feelings, recognizing the flaws, and yet loving the music, the characters, and the nostalgia. As one article put it, Grease has somehow managed to last the distance not in spite of its dichotomies, but because of them. This helps explain why the movie still attracts millions of viewers. It doesn't make perfect sense, but maybe it doesn't have to. For example, you can watch the absurd scene of a car flying into the clouds and roll your eyes, but moments later you're singing "Go Together" at the top of your lungs. The contradictions are part of its magic. Even in its flaws, it reflects real struggles of growing up. Identity, peer pressure, love, and acceptance. Rizzo faces shame and rumors, but still stands strong. Sandy changes herself, but gains confidence. Frenchie worries about her future, but keeps trying. And then there's Mrs. Murdoch, the female mechanic teacher who teaches the boys about cars. These details give the film layers that viewers still connect with today. That's why no matter how much debate surrounds it, Grease continues to be watched, quoted, and performed. As one viewer tweeted, "I'm gonna be right there singing all the songs, but still LOL." Another said, "Although it hasn't aged amazingly, it is still a classic of the time." And that is the story of Grease. A movie that can make you cringe 1 minute and sing the next. A film that refuses to fade away. And a classic that still sparks conversations more than 40 years later. Do you think Grease should still be celebrated as a classic? Or do its outdated themes make it harder to enjoy today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.